Hello, everybody. This is Scott Bunce, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Colleen McKenna. And Colleen has been involved with my Vistage group in speaking. I've actually talked to her a couple of different times, so I'm really excited to have her. But she's a speaker. She's an author of It's Business, Not Social. And I'd like her to tell us more about that and get to know Colleen and her business and what she's all about. Colleen, welcome.
Great to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Why don't we start out with your business? Tell everybody what you do, what you focus on, and why it's unique.
Well, Intero Advisory started in 2011, so we've been around a little over 12 years at this point, and our focus has always been building a better presence, a collective network for individuals and companies, and really creating that branding impact through LinkedIn. So very early on, people were like, oh, you should be a social media agency. I was like, I don't want to be a social media agency. And really started talking with CEOs, and they're like, I don't like social media so much. And I was like, great, we're not here to talk about social media. We're here to talk about a business tool. And that's really one of the first things I say to leaders and professionals. Put that personal bias aside. Let's talk about LinkedIn, the business intelligence, the artificial intelligence within LinkedIn, and ways that you can really leverage the platform to take your business further faster.
Nice. Now, I know you have worked with over 800 companies. That's quite a portfolio of companies that you've worked with. What do you find anything that is common where companies are making mistake and you find yourself over and over again preaching some way to go about business?
There is a couple of common areas. One is everybody presumes everybody knows how to use LinkedIn well. And I think that that's really a misnomer, right? So a number of times in any given month, CEOs will say to me, oh, I need you to talk with my social media coordinator or my marketing coordinator or my marketing leader. They handle all of the LinkedIn. Great, happy to talk with them. Guess what? A lot of times those people really are very comfortable in social media. They don't necessarily, though, understand LinkedIn. It's not the most glamorous of all the platforms. And very often they don't understand it's really all about strategy. And they don't understand the business aspect, the power of people's networks, whether that's the leadership team, the sales team. And so they're really looking at it at a very superficial level. And what we want to do is come in and really showcase the nuance and the power and complexity that LinkedIn really does provide, right? There is complexity there, but when you simplify it and you start to tap into it, it could be pretty powerful.
I find that LinkedIn has changed over the years. And I know when you came into my group, you had us all go live and start editing our LinkedIn profiles. And I couldn't believe how much LinkedIn is advanced. And for me, I couldn't have found how to navigate from one section to the next if you didn't guide us into the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, it's really true. There's so many, again, levels. And right now, what I'm hearing and have been for, probably the last year and a half, so noisy. There's so much noise on LinkedIn. Absolutely. So one of the things that we also want to do is turn down the noise, right? So it's less distracting. It's more tailored to what you're looking for and still allow you to figure out how to stand out on LinkedIn, right? So we calm it down. And sometimes it's hard to do that, but we played in the settings, right? Like that was the first place I took you in your group. Let's go over here. Let's change a few of the ways that you're showing up on LinkedIn and how people can engage with you. And that will kind of quiet it a little bit. What I often say is, though, if you want it to be really direct, Sales Navigator is the tool that you need to look at because it's just data. It's less of that collective network talking to you and showing up on your feed. So there's different tools and different products within the LinkedIn portfolio that are worth looking at depending on what the business use is and the goals that you're looking to achieve.
It was interesting. I upgraded to Sales Navigator and I thought it would be an easy switch, but just canceling my old subscription and upgrading to Sales Navigator, that was a trick just in itself.
Oh, it really is. Just this morning, somebody said to me, okay, I got to finally figure it out. And now here's the other part of that, of now what's happening. I can't access Sales Navigator until such and such a date. There is a clunkiness. LinkedIn has not necessarily made that a seamless upgrade or transition in the purchase. And what I always say to clients, try to line it up as close to your renewal date with that original premium membership as you possibly can, just to minimize that period of time when you feel like you don't have access to it. Typically, LinkedIn comes in on the other side and fixes that because they obviously want you working within their platform. So in some ways, we're translators for LinkedIn. And yesterday, which was Sunday, I had messages, I can't find this. I'm like, you may not have access to it yet. And it has nothing more to do than you don't have access because it's a new feature and LinkedIn rolls things out randomly over time.
What do you find that people make mistakes on LinkedIn? Is there a common, hey, you shouldn't do that? And what would you suggest are the top 2 or 3 most common mistakes on LinkedIn?
I'll point out what we see is the most common mistakes in 3 areas. Presence, profile, not a lot of relevant information. Too much about that person, not written for their audience, right? More online resume than marketing and recruiting tool. That's kind of a lot to unpack, and we could spend a lot of time actually unpacking that, but really building out a strong profile. Number 2, not being very strategic about their network and their network curation, nurturing, and then expansion, right? So people call us all the time. They're like, oh, I need more prospects. Okay, we can talk about that. Who are you currently connected to and how do you nurture that group? Most people don't spend any time there. And then 3, on the content, just not consistently posting content or missing. They mention people, but they don't get the benefit of the mentioning of people because they don't even put an @ before their name. Something as simple as giving that person a shout out in a way that that person notices and is notified so that they can then engage with that content. So kind of misses just, and again, it's the detail, Scott, that, wow, we just add this little detail, we show up a little bit more, right? We add this piece, we show up in search a little bit differently. So all of these pieces align with what LinkedIn looks at, right? And what their, AI looks at, what otherwise known as their algorithm. Content on your profile, relevancy to your network, and then the engagement piece.
So their algorithm has changed over time. What is the algorithm looking for that maybe it didn't look for in the past?
Well, the algorithm continually gets smarter and smarter. What they want is authenticity. So video is going to be even more important because people are going to start to use AI more in their content creation. So how do you actually prove that, that wasn't written by AI? Maybe you show up and do a video instead. Right? Those people that call us and say, give me 3 ways to beat LinkedIn's algorithm, I really don't even have those conversations, right? Because LinkedIn's algorithm is really smarter, as all of their algorithms are, smarter than the people who created the algorithm in the first place. And it's futile to think we're going to beat it. We're not going to beat it. And we should just really align with best practices and create, again, a strong presence, be active, and build a great network. The currency, I think that's really most relevant for most people, is building that right network and then engaging with those people.
Sure.
So that does align with what its algorithm is looking for.
It does. It does.
Mhm.
Tell me, is there a particular business or trade that you focus in on, or what would be the prototypical customer that you're consulting with?
Yeah, so we have a wide range from solopreneurs to very large enterprise companies. Really, I think that really great spot for us is they have multiple locations, or they have a sales team, or they're really looking to think about how they're selling in a new way. So somebody who really is approaching from a more traditional sales experience, they're probably going to keep using LinkedIn more superficially. If they're really looking for a modern selling approach, and they have a leadership team that really understands and has a vision for what can happen on LinkedIn, that mindset where we need to adapt new ways of building business development, client pipelines, talent pipelines, those are our favorite clients because they're very coachable.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be open-minded going into this, that's for sure. Because
Right.
you've been using LinkedIn a certain way for a long period of time. It's a whole new mindset. It's a whole new mindset.
And then when you think about what worked 3 years ago, doesn't work as well today,
Right.
right? And so everything kind of has its own cycle. So now you have to review that strategy and be like, okay, what's the next thing that we should be doing? Or how do we tweak a couple of things? One of the most critical pieces that everybody wants to know is like, what's the magic sauce for the messaging? What's the messaging? And we're really careful with the language that we use in talking with clients about messaging. We can give you messaging guide rails. I don't want to give you messaging scripts, because again, how you know that person, or how you're connected with this person originally, or how you should ask for an introduction, it's all contextual. So a lot of times I'm talking about, 98% of your connections should be personalized, right? Unless we're on a call like this and I say, oh, Scott, we're not connected, I'm just going to send you a quick connection request, and I don't personalize it. But even beyond personalization, there needs to be context there, relevance to that other person who's receiving it. Well, I can't give a lot of scripts, right, for each of those various scenarios and what that context may or may not be. So people will say, what do I say next? What would you say if you were in person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Say
personal.
that, right?
Yeah, personalized.
Right.
All right, let's change topics for a moment. You've written a book. Can you tell us about the book? How did it come about, and what does it focus on?
So that was my contribution for 2020, right? I was working with a consultant. He was like, you really need to put a book together. I'm like, oh, I've written like 400 blog posts. What could I possibly have to say? So I zoomed way out, because the moment anybody writes a book about LinkedIn, LinkedIn changes everything, right? So it's really not so great to write a book about LinkedIn. So I really worked off of the philosophy that we use around it's business, not social. Again, creating that authentic presence, building that strategic network in a way that your network can become a referral engine, and then putting out content that makes sense for who you are and what you do, and really adds value to that network. So it took me about 4 months to get it all together and really write it. It was hard, probably the hardest thing I've done since starting in tarot advisory. And although I feel like it's very 2020-esque, and I'm working actually on doing a new edition, a new update. People still tell me, wow, I learned a lot about that, because again, for CEOs and leadership teams, I'm like, you know what? It's actually irrelevant if you like it. You do need to pay attention to it. And
Mm-hmm.
here's why. And this is why your company needs to build and be able to tap into this collective community of partners and centers of influence and customers and prospects. And the more that you all understand the value of this currency in today's world, where most people don't want to be sold to, you need to really understand how to do this well.
Got it. Hey, is there, with over 800 companies that you've worked with, is there one that you can use as an example that was a fun client or made a big impact? Is there a fun business story?
Is there a fun business story? I actually have a number of really fun business stories. Probably one of them is a president of the North American unit of a manufacturing company, and he has such a huge vision for LinkedIn, probably one of the most active in terms of CEOs I know who actually have a very strong presence and have built a very great positive brand, and actually considers LinkedIn his number one recruiting and engagement tool. And so he is continually infusing that sense of enthusiasm and spirit within his sales team. So I've watched his sales team really sort of change from being, oh, I'm not sure how to do this, or I don't want to make a mistake, to getting really pretty bold in the best sense of the word, and adapting these new ways of selling and using content on LinkedIn. So I always tease him. I'm like, you should just go on the road with me, because he's such an evangelist for building connections. Actually, he always refers to the study out of the, I think it was the 1960s, where talking about weak connections. And weak connections, he's like, you actually drive more business through weaker connections than you often do through that closest network that you typically consider the network. And so as he's been leading his company and they're growing, he just continues to really stand out on LinkedIn to me.
Wow.
So fun story. We've got a lot of different stories, non-believers who've become believers, people who have been very, very successful over the last few years recruiting through LinkedIn, and then certainly driving business, right? So that business development piece, very, very strong. That's where we spend a lot of our time.
Well, what I've discovered is you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not curious about advancing and evolving, you're gonna miss out. Well, I think it's great that you've made this your niche and your company's niche, and congratulations on your book. If somebody wants to have you speak or consult, how do they get a hold of you? And what's the best way?
Right. So our website is Intero, INTERO advisory.com. Certainly through that website, there's a contact us page, certainly through LinkedIn, Colleen McKenna, Intero Advisory. Those are probably the two best ways. My email is Colleen@interoadvisory.com as well. Pretty easy to find me, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not hiding on LinkedIn.
I'm not hiding.
Colleen, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I appreciate all of your insights and wishing you all the best.
Thanks so much, Scott. Great to be with you today.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.